Hello and welcome. This is Tracy Z.
This is Fred Rui.
And we are excited to be here for Note Investing 101 series. We're going to talk about how to get a note business up and going in 90 days. So welcome everyone. We see people logging in, people saying they're excited to be here, looking forward to learning about notes. We are very, thanks. We are to someone else from Colorado. Oh, nice to see you. I hope I'm on the beach somewhere. We're in Florida. We're not currently on the beach, but Scott, who's our producer, is in Hawaii. We know he's on a beach. So welcome everybody. We understand. We used to live in snow, so we understand that. So we are here today to talk about notes.
Yeah, and we're live actually. This is the cool part. So we do these occasionally, and we usually record them and put them up for something. So we decided to create an entire set of videos, kind of like a crash course, if you will. That's why we're calling it Notes 101. So we have the ideas to show you how to build a business. If you're new, then you're in the exact right place, because we're going to start at the very, very beginning. And some of you have seen these little guys before, but we're going to bring these out and start at the very, very beginning. If you're experienced, then you're going to get something out of some of the later episodes, as well as maybe a couple things along the way as well. But it's important that whether you're here to get started or whether you want to get your business to the next level, we hope to accomplish that and share a lot of information with you.
So we're going to talk, just to get started, who is this industry for? So Fred and I have been buying and selling real estate notes for over 50 combined years. And we see this applying to three main groups. It's people who want full or part-time income, either now or in the future.
Yeah, so we're also talking about real estate without tenants. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but everybody loves real estate, certainly right now. And it's like Mark Twain said, was it Mark Twain said, basically, buy land, they stop making it, something like that? See, if this wasn't live, I would have prepared for that, but I had no idea. But I think he's the one that said that. But basically, hey, there's only one downside to having tenants. It's great when they're paying your bills, but then you have the phone calls in the middle of the night and everything else like that. So this is the advantage of being able to invest kind of in real estate and get all the benefits of real estate without having the headaches of the clogged toilets and the roof and the repairs and things like that.
Right, definitely. Well, the three T's: tenants, toilets, and trash, or sometimes they call it termites, or whatever they're all headaches.
That escalated quickly.
So we're going to talk about having a real estate backed asset, which is a note, mortgage, a deed of trust. And so you have an asset that you're familiar with, yet as Fred mentioned, you're the bank, and banks don't get calls at 2 a.m. for stopped up toilets or lockouts or kids flushing something down the toilet. Mm-hmm. So the third group that might be here are people who are just looking to diversify their portfolio. So we work with a lot of people who have self-directed retirement accounts, and they're looking for something besides the stock market or besides physical assets like real estate. And so real estate notes can be an alternative investment form for a self-directed retirement account. And it can be done in and outside of a retirement account. It kind of depends on what your purpose is for the income. And we'll talk about that today.
Yeah. So as, I guess real quick before we get going too far though, we do want to we have to do a disclaimer. So just because we're not investors, we're not telling you what to do with your money. Here's the fine print. We're not attorneys. We're not giving you legal or financial advice. I know you've seen this. Don't eat yellow snow. Whatever it is.
That's just a Princess Bride reference.
I don't know what it is, but basically, just understand that obviously you have to do your own due diligence. We have to say that because that's why we have all the weird warning labels, because somebody at some point did something they weren't supposed to. So just be aware.
Yeah, and we're not trying to sell you an investment or an asset or a security. We're just here to talk about deals that have worked for us over the years.
Yeah, and which leads me to where I was going, Liz, which is the why us? Why would you be listening to us? And as Tracy mentioned earlier, we have over 50 years combined experience in the industry. We've done this for a very, very long time. Early in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, I was actually in a 500 square foot apartment, and I was taking some night classes by a gentleman by the name of John Richards, who's well known and since passed away, but well known in the note industry. And in that class, we were learning to buy real estate, but 1 week he taught me the financial calculator, and he purchased notes, and he taught me that, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. You hear me say a lot, I don't like math, but I do like money. And so he taught me how to do that. He taught me in our class, and I was hooked. So I actually started my business in a 500 square foot apartment. I spent a ton of money on a computer, which now computers cost nothing by comparison back then, and a fax machine. And not even like a really nice fax machine that was
dating yourself now.
Well, yeah, I know. It wasn't even like the regular paper. It was that roll, that like the thermal paper that would fall behind the desk. It's not. Look, it's not important that I did learn that, by the way. Again, 500 square foot apartment. I did learn that the fax machine with thermal paper should not be in the kitchen where you have a stove, because then basically it turns the roll all black. But anyway, so that's where I started. And then I actually joined up with another investor and was one of the largest investors in the country. Then I went to the other side and joined a funding team where I met Tracy. And then we left it all, how many years ago? 25 years ago?
Yeah, so it's what's interesting about your story that I really like is that you learned about this taking a real estate class in college. Don't you wish that they taught this sort of information in all classes? I mean, you just were fortunate that the person teaching the class knew about real estate notes.
Well, the schools don't teach you real estate, or they don't teach you money, and they don't teach you relationships, and they're probably the two biggest things in your life. Ours are together, which is really weird.
Yeah, so yeah, as Fred mentioned, we come at it a little bit differently, but we met through the note business. So he started out on the side of flipping notes, and I started out on the institutional investor side. So I had a real estate and closing background. I worked for an attorney in a small company that had a title company, and it was really. I learned about seller financing because it was a small rural area, and I moved to what was called the big city of Spokane, and that was in 1988. I went to work for a gentleman that had already been buying and selling seller finance notes for 30 years. So they had started in the 40s and 50s. So I got started in 1988, and I was the person doing all the paperwork and understanding the due diligence and helping them expand their portfolio so that they were buying $20 million a month from people like Fred and that group that would bring the notes to us. And so we came up from an institutional investor side, and from that side, we also were securitizing notes and putting them on so they could be sold into Wall Street. And so we were taking that seller finance paper and trying to turn it into something that looked more like what the bank paper was. And so then Fred and I met through the note business, and in 1997, we started our own company together, and we also started the noteinvestor.com blog, which is really was a labor of love, right? It's got a whole over 300 articles on it.
Yeah, it was a lot. There's a ton of information if you go to noteinvestor.com. There's a ton of information there, and it's grown over the years. It became one of the most what's that? What's not an affinity site? What's that called? Authority site. Thank you.
Oh, there's an affinity.
Well, yeah, an affinity, but there's an authority. It's an authority site on that, and we've always been very giving with the information, same as these videos, and you'll see going forward. We don't hold anything back. I mean, I think at this point in our lives and what's happened to us, and we've been fortunate to do, is it's a matter of giving back. So we created noteinvestor.com. A couple years back, we created cashflowexpo.com, which I know there's several people here that were at Cashflow Expo, where we brought together a bunch of speakers that were not selling anything, that were just passing on information, paying it forward, if you will. And then you were largely behind creating the Personal Profit series.
Yeah, so we have a Personal Profit Series manual. It's a 475-page manual. It's for all the detail people who like to see the documents and how the due diligence works. And we also did a calculator class. So it teaches people how to use a financial calculator. I noticed that somebody said in the comments, it kind of caught on my eye that they'd taken that class. So thanks for being here as well. But today, what we really want to talk about is how we have used the note business for ourselves. So we've seen it from the institutional side, and then we started our own company, and we bought and sold notes in retirement accounts. We've used lines of credits. We've flipped some notes or rehabbed some notes and sell them for a profit. And so we're here to talk about that because we think it might be valuable to you to see how we've done it. And because we've spanned 3 decades of doing this, we've seen this work in good economies and slow economies and crazy economies like 2008. So we've seen it through all different cycles. And so today we want to talk about where's the opportunity, and then we want to hone in on the seller financing side as well. So there are 3 main areas of opportunity for deal sourcing, in my opinion, if you want to buy or sell notes. And so the first one would be
seller financing, and that's the deal we're going to talk about, and that's the traditional deal. That's probably where there's more often than not, and we're going to go through an example of that, and you're going to have that down cold here in just a minute with our little magnet people.
Yeah, and so that's where we got our start. That's where in the 80s we were starting and selling all seller finance. And so what we saw happen was after the news segment of notes that came in, those were non-performing notes, and those tended to come from hedge funds or banks liquidating some of their portfolio. Non-performing notes, they also could be the form of reperforming notes. You usually see a lot of those on the note listing sites that you might have seen, like Notes Direct or PaperStack, although they sometimes also have seller finance notes as well. But what's interesting is until the 2008 subprime lending crash, non-performing notes wasn't really something we dealt with. We found our inventory were seller finance notes. So there are still non-performing notes out there. Today, we're going to talk primarily about performing notes. We can save the non-performing notes maybe for a future session. And then the third thing that we want to talk about is the creating notes.
Yeah, and that's basically where instead of going out and trying to find notes, you're actually creating notes. And this is really attractive to people that are used to flipping properties, or people that have properties they want to sell.
Yes, and so in creating notes, in addition to doing that with properties you want to buy or sell, you could actually originate a loan as a private lender to another investor. So that's something else popular. So those are the three main areas of deal sourcing, because people always wonder where these deals come from. Seller finance notes, non-performing or reperforming, and then also the create your own notes. So we are excited to have you here. So what we'd like to do now is kind of hone in on the seller finance notes. So in general, seller financing is about 6% of all real estate transactions. Now that can be more or less. Some states have less. It's not as familiar. Some states have more, but that's just an average. So we've actually got some cool stats that we're going to bring up on the screen to show you just how big it is, because this always surprises people.
Well, I think it's one of those things that people talk about where they haven't heard of it. They haven't heard of it. Well, if you think of all real estate transactions, 6% plus or minus is a really big number. So the first thing we want to show you graphically up here is just how much money we're really talking here. And the answer to this from last year, because we're always a trailing year in gathering the information, is 23.9 billion
with a B.
With a B. So that's 113.8 billion in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's a
really,
really big market, much bigger than people think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So you think you just need a little slice of the pie. So in addition to there being 113 billion plus in the last 5 years, this is made up of a lot of different things. This is made up of residential, commercial, land. And so we can look at the slide that shows us the stats on that. We've got the residential made up about 39% when you're talking about the dollars, land made up about 25%, commercial made up 18%. And then we had this little bit that was unknown, and it pretty much all comes out about similar ratios on that. That just meant that the county where this data was obtained from didn't identify easily what the property was. So where did this data come from? Well, this is public records data. So whenever you buy or sell property, a deed gets recorded. And whenever you get a loan, a mortgage or a deed of trust gets recorded. And so this data shows that the person that sold the property also took back the mortgage or the deed of trust. So this comes from public records. We work with a company to get this data, and they've been tracking it for us for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have a graph that shows the tracking of it. Scott, if you could put that up there. Yeah, so this actually gives you a decade of seller financing usage. This is how much, and you can see that it went up, obviously, back in 2013, 2014. You can see where it kind of hit the highest position there. And if you take a look at that and you look at interest rates, you can see where these correspond and go back. You can see lately it's come down, but it's still a huge number. It doesn't matter to us as long as there's always inventory, which there is. So in this case, and I think what's going to happen now is you're going to start seeing it uptick back up pretty soon here.
Yeah, so seller financing fills a need when the lenders start to restrict their criteria and they want a higher down payment or a higher credit score, then fewer people qualify for traditional bank financing. And so in those situations, we see that the percentage of seller financing goes up. Or if their credit's been hit because they've had some slow pays, unfortunately, we can't deny what's happened in the last year. Wow, yeah. It's been a crazy year. So we hope we find people well and healthy, and also trying to think how can they help people in the future. And this is one of the ways I believe is that seller financing is going to help some people get back on their feet that have been hit a little bit hard by life. So so those are all the numbers. And now we're going to go to the board and we're going to kind of show them a transaction, how that might look, right?
Yeah, so we're going to take a step back. And those of you that have been in the industry for a while, just kind of bear with us for just a second. We always find this the easiest way to explain to the people. And the purpose of the series is to not leave anybody behind. So we're starting at the very basics. And then as you see, as the series progresses and we do more of these videos, you're going to see that we get more and more advanced. But we do want to start at the very, very beginning. So basically what we're dealing with is a house.
Yep.
Ta-da! There we go. We have a house.
It's a tiny house.
This is high tech. Look, we spent all our money on this camera. So that's not true, but it makes for a good story. So this is the way a typical transaction would work without any type of note situation. And what do we call this guy?
Sam the seller.
Sam the seller. There we
Watched
go.
us
It is
before.
the Dr. Seuss of home sales. So Sam the seller, who is much bigger than the house, by the way. Sam the seller just wants to sell his house, and somebody comes along to buy the house.
And we'll call her Barb the buyer. And
Oh, Barb the buyer.
Yeah.
Good.
And what traditionally happens, right, is Barb the buyer goes and gets.
Yeah, so she's going to borrow money from a bank to pay Sam. So, I want the money. Well, first, the bank has the money.
Yeah.
So she's gonna get a loan from the bank, and then the bank is going to send the money to Sam the seller.
Yep.
Sam the seller, and then she gets the house. And then he's gonna go away with his money, and she's going to continue to make payments to the bank.
Yeah. So
And
traditionally 30 years.
Yeah.
That's, we start here because everybody understands this. If you bought or sold real estate or bought or sold a home, you understand that if you don't have the money to pay cash, you borrow the money from the bank, the seller gets their money, and then they just, the buyer just makes payments to the bank. So in seller financing, it's just a little bit different. So in that situation, we still have Sam the seller, and we still have Barb the buyer.
So there's a couple of reasons this happens. It depends what happens in the environment, but this could have been a property that was harder to sell for some reason. Sam could have been insisting on getting a higher sale price. He might have really liked Barb, but Barb didn't qualify at the bank. So she, maybe she went to get a bank loan and doesn't qualify. Maybe, heaven forbid, she's self-employed and doesn't qualify. You're going to see a lot of people come out of here that are really good people to have a single life circumstance, like what's happened in the last year, that all of a sudden don't qualify for bank loans. And even as low as the interest rates are, they're just not going to be able to get loans. Or in some areas, it's very common, like, we said 6% is a plus or minus national average, but in some states, it's a much higher percentage because this is a normal way of doing it. He may also simply want to carry back a note because it's a good return for him. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So in that particular case, he's going to carry back a note. You want to talk about how he does that?
Yeah, so in this particular case, if Sam, the seller, sells to Barb, the buyer, now she's still going to get her deed. So she, at closing, will get a deed. And I've got things for that. So she'll still get her deed. But what she's going to sign is a lien over to Sam, the seller. And so in this case, she's going to have a lien. And that's going to be secured either by, and the lien is evidenced by a promissory note in almost all states. But what might change is that instead of a promissory note, that's always the last one I pick.
A lot of paperwork. Here's a lot of paperwork.
So in some states, it's a deed of trust. That is what secures the promissory note. And in some states, it's a mortgage. But basically, the lien is what's recorded, either the mortgage or the deed of trust in the county. So Barb the buyer gets the deed, and she signs a note back to Sam the seller. And then they put a lien on the real estate that says, if I don't honor my promise to pay, you can take the property back. So in this situation then, what happens is, instead of there being a bank, remember we took the bank away, Sam the seller becomes the bank. And every month, Barb the buyer sends the payments to Sam the seller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and hopefully they use a third-party servicing agent to collect those payments every month, because they'll keep track of principal and interest and do the collections, and that's what makes it so passive. It's kind of like, think of the servicing company as a property manager for your note. They're not managing the property, right? They're managing the note. But the great news is that they usually are available for $20 to $30 a month, so less than a traditional property manager. So every month, Barb the buyer makes the payments to Sam the seller, and she puts some money down, and he stays in the picture, right?
Yep. So to pause for just a second, because I think this is an important distinction, I'm going to lose the paperwork.
Yep.
Just briefly. Just understand that all happens behind the scenes, and it's no different than if this was me and this was Tracy, and I said, hey, do you want to buy my house? And Tracy's going to pay me so much a month to own my house. We're going to do all the paperwork to protect Tracy. We're going to do all the paperwork to protect me. But as long as she mails me payments every month, she will eventually own the house. And we have paperwork in the back that which happens if she doesn't mail me and things like that. But that's essentially what we're doing. We're removing the bank. I'm happy because maybe I didn't want all the money in a lump sum, or because I'm going to create an interest rate and say, hey, Tracy, you're going to pay me 8% a month on that. And so now I'm going to earn money while I have the notes. So we're going to talk about buying notes in a second, why this is very important. But this is how essentially this person created their own note. We talk a little bit about creating notes. This could have been a rental property that he no longer wants to rent out and decides, you know what, I'm going to sell it. And then he sells it to Barb. And now Barb is going to make payments straight to him. But the important distinction is there's no bank involved.
Yes. Now, sometimes, Sam, the seller might still owe money to a bank, and we can talk about that in a more advanced strategy, because this can be done without owning properties free and clear. But in this particular instance, he sold it to Barb. Barb makes payments to Sam, the seller. Mm-hmm. So now, so there's Sam, the seller. So where do we come in? How can we get involved?
Well, I think we have to do the numbers.
Oh, I thought we were going to show how to flip a note and bring in an investor.
Yes.
Yes. You want to do that and then go to the numbers?
Okay, yeah.
All
let's
right.
do that.
All right. So there's a couple of ways that you can participate in the industry. And so say Sam the seller is getting payments every month because he sold to Barb the buyer, and he likes being the bank. He has all the rights of a bank, but he would like to get some cash. He's tired of a small monthly payment trickling every month. So people market, including Fred and I, and you can too. We market to these people, and we should.
That is not us, by the way.
We should get our own pictures on there. We say, are you receiving payments on properties sold? We pay cash today, sell all or part of your payments, and receive a lump sum of cash. And so we market to people like Sam the seller, and they contact us and ask a quote. And in that situation, we can either buy the note and earn a great yield, or we can flip the note to another investor and earn a fee. So if we were to come into this situation and buy the note, say in our retirement account, then Sam the seller would get his cash. So he gets his cash from us.
In the money, he goes away.
And we get an assignment of his interest, and we now get the payments from Barb the buyer.
Sam over here all happy with his money.
So in that situation, we're happy. We're an investor. We're earning a great return. We have the same position as a bank as far as like if Barb does not make the payments, then we are able to foreclose and take the property back. But Barb's paying along great, and we're receiving payments. But if we don't have money to buy the note, or we don't want to buy that note, then we have another option.
Yeah, so what we can do is actually flip that note over to a group of funders. Yeah. And we're going to show you the numbers in a second. So if we have our own money, then we are basically going to pay Sam the seller to step in and take over his position. And we're going to take his place. We're going to give him cash, whatever we agree on, and then we're going to receive the payments. If we don't have our own money, then we are going to flip the deal to an investor simultaneously so that they put up more than the money. So we agree on a price. They put up more than enough money to pay for Sam plus something else for me for the flipping on that. So we're going to use their money to buy Sam's note. And then what happens when this is all done is Sam walks with his money. We walk with every little money we made. The funding source is the one that's going to get the payments.
Yep.
I hope that made sense.
I think
if not, you're going to see this over and over again because we'll be talking about the same type thing.
Excellent. All right, so let's go to the numbers now, like you mentioned. So we'll take away our magnet people.
Well, I want to leave my two magnet people up here.
Okay, you want these guys?
Yes.
Galleys and gals. All right.
All right. So we're going to look at the numbers, and this is where it really gets kind of fun. And this is the exciting part and you're going to see why this industry is so flexible. And yes, we are putting a piece of paper over a chalkboard. I don't want to hear anything about that because it's just too hard to read if we don't.
It's too much glare. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's talk, and I'm going to use some round numbers, and we have a tendency to always use these round numbers. So interest rate aside, and maybe the properties cost more or less in your area. Maybe the interest rates are more or less depending on what's going on in the market, but I'm just going to use this number. And we're going to say the sales price is $120,000. I'm just going to put SP. This is the sale price of the home. This is what they've agreed to purchase for. There's going to be some sort of down payment. What do you think she wants to pay for a down payment?
Let's go with $20,000.
All right. So there's going to be a down payment of $20,000. Is that a good down payment?
Yeah, I like to see personally 20% or more, but
sure.
Yeah, that would be a decent down payment. It's a little bit less than 20%. It's what, about 18%?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid down payment. Yeah, I think that's a really good amount of money. And in the last year, by the way, and I did see some interesting numbers the other day, there's a lot more people having cash. This down payment is not surprising right now because A lot of people haven't been able to eat out at Olive Garden and all this other stuff people are talking about, and they're starting to have a lot more cash. So that means after the down payment, we're going to create a note of $100,000. That's going to be the note. That's the amount. So it's $120,000 sale price, $20,000 down payment. We have a $100,000 note. So we're going to do that over how long are we going to give her to pay?
Let's do a traditional 30 years.
Okay, so it's going to be a 30-year note, which is 360 payments. So we're going to say 360, and we call that N for number of payments. And we're going to do an interest rate of, I'm going to do 10%.
And I know you're all thinking this is shocking. Who's paying 10%? But we find a lot of seller finance notes that are in the 8, 9, 10% range.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, as an aside, you know, this number is all negotiable. So I could if I really didn't want to carry back a note, and this was my hot button, and go, you know, I want to earn 10%. If you don't want to pay me 10%, go get a bank loan or go find another way to do it. So, but this number could be whatever we agree on. But let's just say for the purpose of the example,
it's a nice, easy number.
We've done 360 months, which is 30 years traditional mortgage at 10%. So the payments on that are actually going to be $877.57. That's how much Barb is going to mail Sam. I'm really bad with names, but I'm good with numbers.
Even with this magnet people.
I know. Even I don't have a vested interest in these magnet people. I don't know. They're not going to be around. So $877 every month to Sam the seller. And that's the note. That's the cash flow. That's what we're looking to buy. Now, let's say Tracy comes along, and Tracy is this group here. Tracy's the investor, and she wants to buy it for herself. Let's not talk about flipping or anything right now. She wants to buy it for herself. What do you want to earn on your money?
I would like to get 11% return.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Tracy wants to earn 11% on her money. Now, there's a whole lot of reasons this wouldn't happen because we always have some sort of discount because of some cost. But let me say this. If Tracy wanted to earn 10% on her money, and she came in at the exact moment this all started, she could pay him $100,000. She would receive the $877.57 and of 360 payments, and she would be earning 10% on her money. But this is where the magic of the industry comes. Yeah. She doesn't want to earn 10%. She wants to earn 11% on her money. Now, we cannot go back to her and to Barb, thank you. We can't go back to Barb and change the number. So what do we do?
So we understand the time value of money, and we put it in our financial calculator, and we say if I have 100,000 payable at $877.57 for 360 months, and I want to earn 11%, what's the present value of that cash flow? And that is the amount that we would pay. So in this case, it turns out to be approximately
$92,150.
Yeah. So if I wanted to earn 11%, I could pay Sam the seller $92,150. He would get his $92,150. He would sign an assignment of mortgage or assignment of deed of trust, and he would endorse the promissory note. I would get the original promissory note. I'd record an assignment, and he'd get his money and go away, and then Barb, the buyer, would make payments too. So that would be how that transaction looks as an investor.
The way we get the money is we're paying less money. We're paying $92,150 for $100,000. So
the discount.
That's the discount. So we're paying less money for the same cash flow. So the cash flow is always the cash flow when somebody changes it, but it doesn't change. So it's always going to be 360 payments of $877.57. That cannot change or will not change unless we agree on something, and that's a whole different scenario. But that is so basically that's $100,000. If we pay less for it, then the yield's going to go up. The return is going to go up.
Yeah. So in that case, we could buy then a retirement account. If we leveraged it, if we had costs of funds, say 5%, and we're making 11, we've got arbitrage of 6%. Those are different ways as an investor that you can do it. But let's say you find this note and you don't have the funds available right now to buy it, but you still want to do the deal. There is opportunity. So let's look at flipping a note or wholesaling a note.
So what we would do is we would actually contact a funder. And we would ask the funder, we'd say, hey, this note is for sale. How much are you willing to pay for this note? And they would give us a quote. And let's just say they wanted to earn.
They're happy with 11.
Okay, so they said, okay, so we're gonna pay $92,150.
Yeah.
Now, Tracy, you don't have $92,150 right now. So you're going to flip the note onto these people, but you're going to get paid for finding the note. So how much do you want to make?
I would be happy making, I mean, it would be a low fee, but I'd be happy making about $2,000.
Okay. So we're going to take off, the funder came back and gave us this amount. We're going to take off $2,000 for ourselves, and that's going to give us
$90,150 to pay Sam. Yeah. So at closing, we sign an option agreement with Sam, and then at closing, that's assigned to the funder. They know this is all transparent. They know exactly what's happening. It follows their due diligence procedures. They order the title, they order a BPO or some kind of valuation of the property. They do their check on the payer, the 3 Ps as we call them, the payer, the property, and the paperwork. And then at closing, they'll wire $90,150 to Sam the seller, and they'll wire the difference, the $2,000 referral fee to us. And in this case, the funder is paying all the costs associated with that, so that's just a net fee. So on transactions like that, we see on average, the average fee is about 3 to 6% of this amount the funder is investing. Now, sometimes it's more on smaller deals, a higher percentage. Sometimes it's less on bigger deals as far as a percentage. But that is how you can make a referral fee in the industry if you don't have funds to invest on your own.
Yep. So let's see if we have any questions here. I'm going to look at the board here, Ron. Is there a usury concern? It's a great question.
That's a great one. So there are different usury rates in different states, so you do have to check that out. There's also, if you're creating notes, there's something called Dodd-Frank and high-cost QM qualified mortgages. So what we recommend in those cases is that you work with an MLO, a licensed mortgage loan originator, in that understands seller financing. And we have some that
if you're going to create a note.
If you're going to create a note, if you're brand new, the seller creating that, then we recommend that you do that to create the note, just to make sure the buyer qualifies. But as you, an investor, discounting the note, that's not usurious. You're not making a loan. You're not charging them interest. It's just like buying a property at a discount. So if you're buying a note at a discount, it's just like buying a piece of property at a discount.
Yeah.
Where usury would come in is what the interest rate is being charged
when they
on the note.
Yeah.
That's where usury potentially could come in. And that's where you would use an MLO. We do it all above board. There are some exemptions to Dodd-Frank and using an MLO if you're doing one seller finance transaction in 12 months. But I recommend you just go ahead and use it anyways, because it just papers it up just like a bank would. It qualifies, and you get to choose the underwriting as far as what score and down payment, those sorts of things that they would have. And that's been a big change in our industry since 2014, and we all adapted a little bit. But I think at the end of the day, it probably made the paper better quality.
Yeah, and again, this only applies if you're creating notes, which we'll go into in another video. If you're not creating notes, if you're just buying notes, then that's not what you're discounting.
You're just buying at a lower price, and that's not usurious because you're not charging anyone interest. You're just discounting it.
Yep. Daryl said, do you use a title company? Absolutely. Yeah, that's who we do. We do the closing through. So we close it similar to a real estate transaction, except it's just different paperwork. But basically, I mean, how else would you say it?
Yeah, so if you're buying, we always use a title company. There's 2 different types of title. There's a title report, and there is a title insurance policy or a commitment for insurance. If you're working with seller finance transaction, then we definitely suggest getting title insurance, because you want to make sure you're coming in after the fact that the note was created properly. If you're creating note, you want to make sure that is also done properly. If you're buying that bank paper that we talked about and a title policy called a lender's title policy already exists, then you might be able to just get a title update, because that lender's policy will often go to your benefit, to the successors and assigns. That would be definitely a more advanced topic, but title is where I learned the business. So if you have follow-up questions on that, we can all definitely discuss that. But we do involve the title company. Whether you get title insurance or title report will vary on the type of paper you're buying and whether or not a title policy already exists.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And one more question, then we're gonna stop for this video, because we got some, we got to save stuff for other videos. But Teresa said, would the group be paying $94,150? No, and let me explain why. It's a great question. Yeah. It's a common one. So before this exists, what we're doing is we're actually finding out how much will the funder pay for this note, and the funder said $92,150. So it's an important thing, and a lot of people have made this mistake before. You don't add your fee, you subtract it from what they're going to pay. So if they're offering $92,150, we have to take something off of that to offer Sam the seller to cover our fee. And how we do that is we say, okay, we want to make $2,000. So we're going to take $2,000 off of the $92,150. Now the net we have to offer Sam would be the $90,150, and that's how we would be able to do it. I'm going to do a follow-up question. She had a follow-up question. Why would the seller only take $90,000? And it's a great question. A lot of times when the Sam the seller worlds first make the transaction, they think that they're going to be happy for 30 years. They're going to be happy collecting $877.57 a month, and that's just the way it's going to go for the rest of their lives. In reality, and usually in either a short period or 3 to 4 year on average, something changes in their life. It could be good, it could be bad. It could be they're going to send their kid to college, it could be something medical, it could be they just need to sell it to do something different. So a lot of times, now this $877 a month is just not going to cut it. Maybe Sam wants to buy a boat. Maybe he wants to invest in a business. Maybe he wants to buy another house. It could be anything, but this is not enough money. And he can't just walk into his, bank and say, hey, I got this note. Can I sell it to you? Because most banks won't even have a clue or won't even touch it. So that's why it goes to a market to investors like us and why we buy at a discount. And in reality, if someone would have walked up to Sam at the time and said, hey, you know what, will you sell this for $110,000 instead of 120 cash, he would have taken it. So as long as the discount makes sense in everybody's world, he's going to get $90,000 cash now, as opposed to waiting over 30 years to collect his money. So there's a lot of different reasons, and we'll talk about that in another episode, why the discounts are and how they show up.
Yeah, and we also are going to talk about in an upcoming episode, in fact, the next episode, something called the partial purchase. And the reason we talk about the partial purchase is we can give them full face value without them taking a discount if they're willing to take some money now and some money in the future. And that's how we structure a partial purchase. So that's a great setup for our
arguably the coolest thing about this industry.
Honestly, we love partials. We're partial to partials. They're one of our favorite things. And so we are so appreciative that you joined us in this session. And we want to remind you that if you go to noteinvestor.com/101 for Notes 101, right? So noteinvestor.com/101, that you will, get, this is how you know it's live.
This is how you know it's live. Here's the lawn crews here.
So if you go to noteinvestor.com/101, you will put in your email and we'll give you a free copy of our 5 ways to cash in on cash flow notes. And we'll give you a free ebook on 21 tips for note investing. And then we will also send you the link to the next session. So our next session will be coming up. And a
replay if you missed any of this session.
And a replay, yes.
So
and
we'll have a quick replay.
We'll do that. And our next one, we're going to talk, we're going to go through 4 or 5 different deals of how you can make money on them. And we are also going to talk about those partials.
Yep, that's it. So hit follow, like, whatever the little buttons are, share. I don't know what any of the things are on there, but thank you for joining us. There we go. See, wait, put it back up there. Scott, put it like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell. See, I didn't even know that. Thankfully, we have a producer. We have somebody that knows what's going on here. So
we appreciate you being here. The note investing world has been good to us, and we enjoy sharing it with others. And as you saw, there's 23.9 billion a year. So there's lots of to go around, and it's just a way for private investors to be able to make the money like the banks do.
Yeah, and we'll see you in the next video.
Happy note investing.
Take care.